So again, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining the call today. I'm Sheila Rabun, the ORCID US Community Specialist at LYRASIS. As you know, this was going to be a follow-up call to an in-person meeting that we were going to have last week in San Diego, but as you know, the plans have changed and we're now living amidst a global pandemic. So I really hope everyone is staying safe and well. And thank you again for taking the time today to get together with your colleagues and chat about ORCID. I'm going to start us off, like I said, with a brief update on what has taken place over the past 2 years and current trends that we're seeing, in a general overview for where we are with ORCID in the US in 2020. So the ORCID US Community Consortium was officially formed in January of 2018. And I started in the community specialist role in May of 2018, so about 2 years ago. And when I started, we had about 90 institutional members. And as of April 1st this year, we have 132 members. So we're gaining about 20 new member institutions each year. And that's growth that we're expecting to see continue. Even during this very turbulent time, I've had institutions wanting to join and become new members. Most of our members are universities, but we do have a few research institutes and health systems that are not affiliated with a university. And as of May 1st, we'll have a nonprofit funder joining us, the Children's Tumor Foundation, which is part of a group of nonprofit funders called the Health Research Alliance. And we basically have a new partnership with them where nonprofit funders that are part of the Health Research Alliance, if they want to become ORCID members, they're going to join through our consortium. So basically, the composition of our consortium is growing and becoming more diverse, which I think will be really great for sharing multiple perspectives around ORCID. So getting into some more of the trends and activities that we're seeing with ORCID in the US at large right now, in addition to our consortium, which is for nonprofit and non-government organizations, the US federal government is also increasingly using ORCID. On April 1st, which was just last week, after months of planning, the Department of Energy formalized an ORCID consortium for DOE affiliated organizations, and potentially other government agencies can join them too. So this is a list of the current members led by the Office of Scientific and Technical Information at DOE, and also you can see several of their affiliated labs and facilities are also part of this new ORCID consortium for government institutions. And then in addition to that DOE consortium, several other federal agencies are also increasingly paying attention to ORCID. I think almost everybody probably knows this by now. I feel like I've said it many times, but the NIH, the CDC, and AHRQ are now requiring ORCID IDs for certain types of grants. And then the other agencies that you see listed here are either asking for ORCID IDs or requiring ORCID IDs in various aspects of their research workflows. It differs from one agency to another around the details of what they're doing with ORCID, but we are seeing an uptick in ORCID usage at the federal government level. And I think largely in part due to that increase of interest, we're also seeing more general increase in awareness at various research institutions across the US as well, various internal stakeholder units within institutions like universities, for example. So in general, libraries have been the primary leaders in the ORCID space so far in the US, and that's still very much the case. But for example, with the new NIH requirements and also the new NSF requirement about science CV, which can be populated from ORCID data, research administrators in central research offices, sponsored programs offices, for example, are now also, their interest is getting piqued. They're reaching out to learn more about ORCID. And just to give you a sample of what we're seeing in our own community in terms of member contacts. So out of our 132 members right now, 6 members have non-library roles as their main ORCID contacts for that institution. So Office of Research, Graduate School, Central IT, Academic Technology. If you're coming from an organization that's not a university, you might think about other stakeholder units within your organization and how those might kind of line up. And currently we have about 25 of our member institutions that have non-library staff included on their general list of ORCID contacts. So the majority of our member contacts for ORCID are in the libraries, but the more other stakeholders can be included in communication about ORCID, the more strategic and ultimately beneficial your ORCID membership can be. Because ORCID is like an ecosystem, and the more people and the more systems that are using it, the more everyone can benefit. So I have been hearing from different stakeholders at institutions that are not already my ORCID contacts. So when I do get those communications, so for example, if all of your institution's ORCID contacts are in the library and maybe somebody from your research office reaches out to ask about ORCID, I'll try to make sure that I connect them with you as the main contacts for ORCID. So I'm trying to help connect various internal stakeholder units with each other to streamline communication and promote understanding about ORCID across the organization. And if you want to add additional contacts to my official list, just let me know. I can add and update contacts as often as you want. And just for fun, as a artist rendition for the day, this is a word cloud that I made that I used all of the roles or the titles for everybody that's on my contact list for ORCID. So you can see that library and librarian, feature pretty prominently here. And just as a tip, we're also seeing an increase in planning and action to officially endorse ORCID across institutions. So most recently, I know at Stanford University, their faculty senate officially endorsed ORCID for use on campus. And they now have a central integration with their identity management system. And then also California State University, thanks to our colleague Mark Bilby at CSU Fullerton, the CSU system is planning to vote on a statewide Senate resolution for endorsing ORCID, and that's supposed to take place next month. It was already supposed to take place, but it got postponed, so that's something that we'll wait and see how that turns out. But that's something that we're starting to see more of, these kind of official endorsements of ORCID. And so if your institution has done something similar, or if you're planning to, type something into the chat or otherwise let me know, because I may be able to kind of pull together some recommendations and best practices on how to do that. We're also seeing more expansion of discipline-specific awareness and use of ORCID. So I think, as many people know, when it comes to ORCID adoption, it's primarily been the health and medical sciences and other hard sciences that have been leading the way in adoption so far, especially since the journals that they're publishing in and the funding agencies that are providing funding for research for the sciences are increasingly requiring ORCID IDs. But we're also starting to see ORCID adoption spreading to other areas of study as well. I know ORCID has been working on looking closer at arts and humanities and social sciences to see, how ORCID could be leveraged and adapted in those disciplines, because up until now, the main focus really has been in the sciences. But we're also starting to see an increasing interest in ORCID from law schools. And that is because the US News and World Report, which typically does the law school rankings every year, they are actually planning to use data from Hein Online, which is a kind of law and government focused database. They're planning to use data from Hein Online to create a new ranking for US law schools based on scholarly impact. And so Hein Online has integrated their platform with ORCID so that authors can connect their ORCID ID to their author profile in Hein Online and have data written from Hein Online to their ORCID record. So as you can see here, many people in the law field have already started doing this. You can see this is a work section of an ORCID record where the source of the data is Hein Online. And coming up soon, they're also going to be pulling data from ORCID records into Hein Online so that the underlying data used for the scholarly impact rankings can be as accurate and official as possible. So if you are interested in that, I know everybody in the law community has probably already heard about this. We are having a specific call to talk about law and ORCID on April 28th. If you didn't get a memo on that and you want to be involved, let me know. Okay, so now within our own community, I want to just quickly make sure that everybody knows about the main resources that we have available. The primary communication channel that we have is our discussion forum, which I think many people are signed up for. When I first started this 2 years ago, I just had no idea how it was going to go. But as of March of this year, we have 300 people from 126 institutions plugged into that discussion forum. You can see here we have a lot of topics and posts and views. There's been a good amount of activity. A lot of it is announcements and things from me, but I want to let you know that this is a space for you to use as well. So feel free to make posts in the discussion forum too. And we do have community awards coming up in May. And I'll be sending out an announcement about this very soon. But there's an award for the most helpful individual. So that is a person who's nominated from others in the community that has been extra helpful in terms of helping them understand ORCID over the course of the year. And there's also an award for the most active individual, and that's the person who has posted the most in the discussion forum, not me. I'm not qualified to win an award. It's got to be somebody else. So feel free to post in that discussion forum because you might win an award. And there's also a mention of recognition for the institution that has the most people plugged into the discussion forum. So it's just a fun thing to help us stay motivated and continue to communicate with each other. In addition to our discussion forum and the webinars and community calls that we do, I just want to make sure everybody knows about our community resources page on the ORCID US Community website. It looks like this. 2 years ago, this page did not exist, but with all of the input and insight that you all have contributed over the years, we now have several resources, planning guides, one-pagers, resources for outreach and education. So, you know, FYI, that's there. All of our webinar recordings and things are there. And the other page I want to point out is our technical support page, which has a list of common systems in the US and links to information about the ORCID API, searching in ORCID, the different types of data that you can find in an ORCID record, all that kind of thing. Speaking of the ORCID API, we've also seen an increase in efforts to integrate ORCID with campus systems, which is the main benefit of your ORCID institutional membership. And we have really seen recently an increase in looking at central ID management systems and HR systems, and other systems that are not necessarily under the scope of the library. So again, partnering with these other internal stakeholders you know, has grown in prominence and is really important. As of March 2020, 71 institutions out of our 132 members have at least one system that's integrated with the ORCID API. And across our community, we have 95 total integrations that are live. And judging from the sandbox credentials that have been issued, it looks like there are about 70 potential integrations that might still be in development or maybe got stalled out and never went through to production. But you can see this line chart here showing how the growth has happened in terms of number of institutions with at least one integration. And I know in the summer of 2018, there was a big kind of spike because a lot of the research information vendor systems had integrated ORCID functionality where you can just plug in your credentials and turn on that functionality. Now, more institutions are moving towards more custom integrations now that the vendor systems have been kind of a low-hanging fruit, and we're moving on to kind of more complex integrations. And leveraging a central ORCID integration to then have data flow between other systems at your institution, that's becoming more popular. So looking at your data infrastructure campus-wide, as opposed to just one-off departmental systems, is emerging as a strategic approach. And always good to remember, again, ORCID works like an ecosystem. I can't emphasize this enough. It's kind of a chicken and egg scenario where the more people and the more organizations and systems that that are using ORCID, the more everyone can benefit to the fullest extent. So keep that in mind as you're working through. And wrapping up here, in December of last year, which seems like ages ago, we did a community survey where I asked people to select what they need the most help with when it comes to ORCID. And these were the top answers, which I'm not surprised about. The outreach and education to researchers, of course, getting faculty or just researchers in general to use ORCID, getting researchers to connect their ORCID ID with integrations that you have available. Those are all very high on the list. Working with internal stakeholders, I know that many institutions are very siloed to begin with, and that's another side effect of ORCID, is hopefully trying to break down some of those silos, so partnering with your internal stakeholders. And then, of course, technical integration planning, making sure you have resources available to actually take advantage of the ORCID API in your local systems. These are all things that many of you reported needing help with. And of course, these are shared challenges that we can work on together. And as you may have noticed, when it comes to ORCID, there's no kind of one right answer. It really depends on what your context is at your own institution. But we can still brainstorm together and share experiences and identify questions and good advice and other insight that can help us all move forward with ORCID together. Just so you know, I am always here. I am your dedicated ORCID support person. I know I've met one-on-one with people at almost all of our member institutions. If you have not had a call with me to talk about ORCID specifically at your institution, please do that. Please take advantage, because that is a benefit of your membership, is having me as your dedicated support person. You can email me, you can use my calendar app. But I just want to reiterate that I'm here for you. This is my cat. If you have a call with me, you might get to meet her. I'm from Texas originally. That's why there's a Texas flag, but I live in Oregon now. So basically, that's my summary. I can see that people have typed in the chat, but I haven't been able to look at that. I'm going to stop the recording. Stop recording.